Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Classics Castle Grayskull Playset. Those are words that I never thought that I would be saying. Back when this line started in 2008, I never would have imagined that one day we would have a brand new Castle Grayskull playset. Heck, back then I was just happy that we had the figures that we had. I never would have thought we'd have so many characters and that this line would have run for as long as it has now. So it's pretty awesome that we have a brand new Castle Grayskull right here to add to our collections. Now, it's been a pretty crazy ride since this thing was announced a little over a year ago. We all know that the pre-order process has been crazy. Watching this thing go through the entire process of basically getting created after our pre-orders were placed and everything has been an up and down roller coaster ride. But it's finally shipping out. Fans should be receiving their Castle Grayskull soon, and we're going to take an early look at it right here today to see how it turned out. Let's go ahead and start with the massive box. You can see this thing just standing next to me and how huge this thing really is. It's pretty impressive, and the box that it was shipped to me in was even bigger than this, obviously, because it had to house this gigantic box that the castle's in. Now, I do have a few dings on the corners of the box, but I do want to point out that this was put in a shipping box from the factory and shipped out specifically for review purposes, and the final castles that are going out to fans that actually pre-ordered them are coming in special boxes that are designed exactly for shipping these out. That way we shouldn't have to worry about any dinged boxes when the final product comes. Let's go and take a look at the size of this thing real quick, just so you guys know exactly what to expect here. The box stands right about 2 feet tall. It goes about 16 inches deep and about 22 inches across, which is incredibly impressive. So that really kind of puts things into perspective on exactly how big this box is. And the shipping label that was on the box that this was shipped to me in said that it weighed 24 pounds. Now, you've got to, of course, take into account that it was in a large shipping box and there was some packing material inside, but you could probably expect that this thing weighs right around 20 pounds or so, and you can definitely tell it is a very heavy item. So it's going to be crazy getting this thing shipped to people, and I know that shipping prices aren't going to be cheap to get this massive playset shipped out to you. Now, let's take a look at the box itself, because this thing features some incredibly cool artwork by the very talented Rudy Obrero, the same man that painted the Castle Grayskull painting scene on the vintage Castle Grayskull box. It's a very, very cool piece of artwork. It's got that very kind of dark element to it that the original Masters of the Universe line had. And it does have a slew of characters on there that were all voted on by fans. So all the characters seen on the front of the box there, Merman, Trapjaw, Tila, Man-at-Arms, Battlecat, Beastman, the Sorceress Evelyn, and of course, He-Man and Skeletor were all placed on there because of fans that voted in for these specific characters. That box art is awesome, and that alone I'm sure is going to allow people to want to keep this box in their collections just for that classic looking artwork. There's a lot of cool things going on this box here too, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. First of all, you will notice the description on the front listed as Castle Grayskull, the fortress of mystery and power for He-Man and his foes. It's a pretty cool little blurb there. It also lets you know exactly what is included right there on the front of the box. A drawbridge that opens and closes, combat trainer, armory and weapons, a trap door over the dungeon, castle throne, a working elevator, laser cannon, scaling ladder, castle flag, 3 floor levels of adventure, and possibilities. It also has some measurements on here as well for the actual castle. It says the approximate size is 24 and a half inches high and 29 and a half inches long. So gives you a little idea of exactly how big that castle is going to be when we get it out of the box. It also notes on there that it is unassembled, and one of the things I really like is down here in the corner of the box is a cool nod to the vintage box. We got this grown man playing with this castle. And Mattel basically brought in a guy for this picture that kind of looks like the little kid that was on the original Castle Grayskull box, all grown up, so definitely a funny little touch there. Flipping it around to the side of the box, we've got ourselves a brand new bio for Castle Grayskull, as well as some images of the castle inside there. And flipping it around to the back side, another really fun nod to the vintage line is how the box is all white on the back with kind of a red outline artwork of the castle and some of the vehicles and many of the figures in the Masters of the Universe Classics line. Again, this is something that the vintage box had, so that's another cool throwback to the original line. And on the top of the box, we get some cool images of some of the action figures using some of those cool included features on Castle Grayskull, as well as that cool grown man carrying around his folded up castle full of action figures, because it doubles as a carrying case. Cracks me up. I love that. I think it's a really fun touch. And overall, it's a really epic box for what hopefully will be a really epic playset on the inside. So, let's stop playing around with the outside of the box. Let's open this thing up and take a look at the castle inside. Alright, so when you open up the box, the castle is sitting on the inside just like this. You can see it's all folded up. For the most part, the base of the castle itself is already assembled. It doesn't look like there's really a whole lot we're going to have to put together. There is a nice protective bag over the whole castle there. Oh, kind of reveal it there. Oh, look at that thing. That is incredible. So over here on the sides, we have these cool little hooks. We're just going to fold down, and this will allow us to open up the castle. Now, the first time you pull it out of the box, when you open up the castle, this is where you're going to find all of your extra pieces that will need to be assembled. And all of these are individually bagged. You can see there's actually even some nice little clamshells on the inside that are housing the suit of armor, the ladder, all of that fun stuff there. Looks like we got the laser cannon, we got the orb holder, and we've got the little pawn that fits on the top of the castle. Alright, so before we start looking at all the details of this particular playset, let me go ahead and show you how some of the assembly works on this thing. Now, there is a nice sheet of instructions that is included here that will help guide you through the process of where to put everything, and that way you know where everything goes. So we'll go ahead and start off with some of the decorations for the outside of the castle here. First of all, we have the little pawn piece. Now, this is meant to plug onto the top of the skull of Castle Grayskull. This is the way that the castle prototype looked on the vintage toy, and also the way it appeared in some of the original artwork, but this pawn piece was not on the actual original Castle Grayskull playset. So this is one of those things that they made where you can put it on there if you want to, but you definitely don't have to. It just has a little peg on there, and it just snaps into place on the front of the castle there. Now, it is kind of meant to really kind of lock in place and is not meant to be removed again. So as you can see, it's really, really tight, and you can pull it out, but I would almost be careful like putting it in and taking it back out off of there, because you don't want to risk breaking the little snaps that are on the inside. So that locks in place pretty tight. And now we've got the pawn on the top of the castle there. The other thing that is not mandatory to put on if you don't want to is the handle. If you remember, the vintage castle had a little handle sculpted cleverly into the back of it that was meant to look like the shape of the castle, but that way you could also use it as a carrying case for your figures. You've got that as another detachable piece, so you don't have to put that on if you don't want to. It's the same thing. It has the same little snap holes. And actually, let me fold this around so you can see on the inside here, it just fits right under those little snaps on the inside of the castle there. So we're just going to plug that into place. And hear how that all snaps on, and it's very tight. It's a really, really nice tight fit, so you would actually be able to pick this whole thing up with it. But again, that's locks on there really, really firm. So if you put it on, I would probably be careful with trying to pull it back off again, because you don't want to risk breaking anything. That's one of those things that you need to decide beforehand if you really want to put those on or not. That way you can save yourself some trouble. Alright, so the other thing that we can assemble, if you're going to display the castle opened up, it does come with all of these additional flooring pieces that's really going to kind of open up the inside of the castle for you to allow you lots of display spaces in here. So, let me go ahead and show you how all these work. You can see that they're just hollow on the bottom, and they have those same kind of peg things right there all across the bottom, and they're all meant to fit in specific spots on the bottom of the castle here. So, snap that in place there. Actually, it looks like I probably should have started with this one. I should follow the instructions. There we go. Snap that in place. Then we'll take this one and snap it on top. Piece over here. And then we take our final piece, which is like the little corner piece. Snaps that in place there. And there we go. Now we've got a nice little base on the inside. Of course, this hole here is where you'll be able to plug in the Wind Raider or anything like that. Flight stand basically for Wind Raider or the Battle Ram piece. And that is pretty much the extent of the assembly that you need to do. Now you do have lots of other little accessories, like the little laser gun, which kind of sits up on the top here, and lots of other fun little accessories that you can kind of put anywhere you want to in the castle. So why don't we go ahead and start just looking over all of the amazing details on this playset. Alright guys, so now we've got our castle all set up and ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and just start with the front of the castle. We're going to work our way all the way around and all the way to the inside so I can show you guys every little thing about this castle that I can at least see. There's a lot going on here, so I'm going to do my best to make sure I cover everything. First and foremost, let's talk about the amazing sculpt on this thing. The Four Horsemen did an amazing job sculpting their very first playset. This thing is incredible. And what I'm very happy about is the production piece here did such an amazing job of capturing the Four Horsemen's original sculpt, but on top of that, also did a great job of capturing the paint job that was applied to it on that original prototype. You can see that there is a lot of shading. It is all molded in a nice Castle Grayskull green plastic, of course, but there is a beautiful paint job on this. Lots of shading, lots of depth and detail that really just brings out all of the amazing sculpting work on this particular piece. I love all the dark shading that really kind of goes into the crevices, especially the sunken in eyes and the nose of the skull. It really kind of gives it this very kind of scary motif, which is exactly how Castle Grayskull is supposed to appear. But there's a lot of other great things going on here as well. Some of the little touches I like are the little wooden planks that are holding up the top of the castle there, the crown, and over there on the tower. They're very nicely done, have a really nice wood detailing to them, and a great wooden paint job. And even going down to the details on the drawbridge door. The door is very nicely done. You can see all of the metal looking parts of it have this kind of nice worn silver look to it, as if they're very old and very worn. And the door has that very same wood look that we saw up here at the top. Very great wood grain kind of sculpting in there, and it's got a nice dark brown paint job. Very good deco. It's a beautiful piece, and I love even like how the little shield on the door kind of has almost this rusted green color on there. So it's a very great look, very imposing looking castle. Love the sculpt on this thing. It is absolutely astounding looking at this thing in person. Now, overall size when you get this thing put together is still quite massive. Let me go ahead and get my tape measure out here just so you guys can see the size of this thing here. To the top of this tower here, it's about 20 inches. If we go all the way to that pawn right there in the front, it stands right at the 2-foot mark. So this thing is quite large. Just the width of the front of the castle here is about 20 inches in length. The side of it gives it another about 20 inches there. And then of course, if you've got the whole thing open, that's going to take up a lot of space. So this thing is quite massive. It is very big. It's one of the largest playsets that I've got, and it definitely towers over the vintage version of Castle Grayskull. Alright, lots of fun little action features all over this thing. So why don't we go ahead and start with the front of the castle, with that being the drawbridge door. There's a fun little feature here in order to make this work. If you'll notice that there is a very small slit that's almost kind of hidden in the rocks on the right side of the castle door. That is perfectly sized for He-Man's sword, or any of the swords really, but basically this is a great nod to the vintage mini-comics, or also the vintage Castle Grayskull playset where the power sword is what's used to open up Castle Grayskull. So inserting He-Man's sword into that little hole right there triggers the mechanism that makes the door flip open. And even after opening up the door there, there's even more really great work on here. Kind of the way the tongue is sculpted on there, all the teeth on the drawbridge door, very, very nice looking. And it's a very cool, fun working feature. You can see the door easily clicks right back in place, but in order to open it back up, you have to have something in order to trigger that little mechanism. So you got to use a sword or something in order to open up the door here on the front. You'll also notice standing up here on the top, I've already got Teela positioned up here with the little laser blaster. The thing is really cool because it's much improved over the vintage one. If any of you guys had that vintage gun, you know it was too small for the Masters figures to actually even hold on to it. They had to hold on to it one-handed, and there's always one hand not holding it. So it's definitely been improved so that now the figures can hold on to it very nicely. And you can see it rotates at the base, so you can turn the blaster both left and right, but it also has the ability to move up and down. So, you can position the arms kind of where the gun's pointing downwards, so that way you can blast at troops approaching the castle on the ground, you can blast at troops approaching in the air via the roton or something like that. It's a much more functional accessory this time around. It clips right into the top there, and it's a nice tight lock there, and it's got a really great paint deco as well. You can see it's colored just like the vintage one, where the base is kind of this yellowish orange, and then the gun part is a very nice shiny silver. And then over here on the other tower, we have the classic Castle Grayskull flag. Now, again, the vintage one was just like a small flimsy stick, and the flag was a little sticker that was folded around it. So this time around, it's all plastic, it's nice and sturdy. Even the flag is the same mold, and it just has a sticker on it, but it works very nicely. And it's got the same motif with kind of the brighter swords crossed on one side, the darker swords crossed on the other side, so that way you know if it's the good guys who have the castle, or the bad guys who have the castle. Classic feature right there. Of course, that just sits anywhere up here. It just has a nice little base on there, so you can actually set it wherever you want to. But it fits nicely right up there in that tower. So now we are on the side part of the castle. When the castle's open, it is just the side. It is worth noting that the castle does not fold all the way out so that it's flat across. It does stop at this point. So it is basically the side of the castle when you've got it opened up. And again, it's got some great detailing on it, just like the front. I love kind of the wooden shingles up on the top of the roofs here. It's a very nice touch. Very, very cool looking. Now, there is another fun little feature over here. What we've got on the back side is this cool little secret doorway. Now, you might remember your Scareglow figure came with a secret little key for Castle Grayskull. And if you look at the back of the castle, there is a tiny little keyhole right there in the back of the castle. So this is a really fun feature. You get that little key that came with that Scareglow, and that little key actually does fit into that hole right there on the back of the castle. And it plugs in tight enough to where once it's in there, you can actually pull open the secret door. So Scareglow's key actually opens up this little secret passage on the back of Castle Grayskull. Now, it is a bit of a skinny door, so in order to get Scareglow or any other figures in there, you do kind of have to do the classic action figure, I'm going through a door thing. He can't actually stand upright and walk through it, but that's a fun little feature and very cool. It's got a nice little metal rivets on here on the other side there, like it's totally secret. It looks like it's a little hidden passage, and then you can just close that up, and the little key, like get Scareglow out of the way, locks it up real nice. You got the little key, fits right in there. Very cool little feature. I thought that was something that one of those fun little extra touches that goes all the way back to an action figure we got like way towards the beginning of the line. So if you've got that figure, you got that little key that opens that up. Very cool. Alright, so here we are on the inside of the castle where there is quite a bit going on. Now, I already showed you how you can attach the little platform pieces on the inside to kind of expand your play area, which really just makes this thing feel even bigger than it already is. I really like the added floor space there. And there are some really cool extra accessories that are also included with this. Now, you might remember some of these from the classic Castle Grayskull, such as the ladder accessory. It is something that came with the vintage one. This time around, instead of just being like a gray plastic, it actually does have a nice little wood sculpting on there, kind of like the fronts, that same dark wood color. And of course, you can just put that anywhere you want to. It's got the little kind of claws at the top, so if you want to set that just going up to any one of the levels there, or you can even put it on the outside of the castle. It's up to your discretion. Wherever you want to place that thing, it can be put on the inside. We also have the cool little training device. Another thing that's a throwback to the vintage one. This time around, it does look much cooler, though. Again, the same cool wood grain sculpting and paint job. It has a great little face sculpted on one side of it. The other side has these sharp metal claws. Actually looks more effective this time. It's definitely a training dummy, You basically would position your character on the front to do the battle against it. They dodge the sharp parts, they attack the front part, and it does rotate. It's a little tight though. It doesn't like spin loosely like the vintage one, but it does rotate there. And of course it's real nice and solid too, I will say that. Nice quality item this time. And of course that can just go anywhere else that you would want it to. Also included is this little jetpack accessory. Now, this is a straight nod to the vintage Castle Grayskull, an accessory that never was. This was shown in the early prototype stages of the vintage castle and was cut from the final release. So it's like we're finally getting an accessory that we never got before. It's an interesting looking little accessory, and it just has a little belt there, which can actually just go around any of your figures, He-Man or anybody, and basically you just put that around his waist and you strap it on, and then he's got himself a weird looking little jetpack, so I don't know, help him do some battle against Skeletor. So just a fun little extra accessory that's thrown in there. Now, it did not come with a weapons rack, but it does come with some extra weapons. Some really nice shiny silver weapons. We got a shiny mace, we got a battle axe, we have a power sword that looks like He-Man's, but it's all a shiny silver. And then we do have the little guns, little blasters there, 2 little blaster guns, and a shield. Now, if you remember, the weapons rack was released separately as an early weapons pack. So if you do already have that, now you can add it to your Castle Grayskull. Again, this is a cool little throwback to the beginning of the line. This was something we bought a long time ago when we didn't even think we were getting a Castle Grayskull. So now we have a place to actually put this, and a place we can put these extra weapons that came with the castle. You can plug them right onto that weapons rack there. So that's a nice little touch. Now, another thing that's cool is there are places on the walls where you can store some of these weapons. You'll notice on the back here, there is kind of like this sword that is permanently attached to the wall, but it's got this little nub on it. That's made for a shield. So you can actually take one of the shields, or this one here, or any of the shields really. You can clip it on there, and it's a cool little storage space, and makes for a neat little display on the wall where it looks like there's a shield and a sword just kind of placed up there on the wall for decoration. That's a really nice looking little touch there. Then that's going to bring us up here to the elevator. Here's the elevator. Looks just like the vintage one, same color and everything. Does have 2 nice little foot pegs on there, so you can clip any of your figures on there. Any of your basic figures, really. So let's see, we get He-Man on there. And one of the things I like about it is there's little notches in there, so it locks into place when it hits each of the floors. So you can take it down to the bottom floor, and it kind of clips into place. Bring it back up to that second floor there. See how it kind of locks in place. And what's new to this castle is there's a 3rd floor. The vintage one only had the 2 floors. This one can go all the way up to the top, which brings you up to this extra little ledge up here. So a nice little extra display space, something that we didn't have in the original castle. Now, like I said, it really only works for your basic figures. So, sorry, Shadow Beast, you still are unable to go down the elevator. But at least it'll work for He-Man and Skeletor and any of your basic guys. Now there's these cool little deco up here at the top where we got these little golden skulls that are sitting up at the top, which is, again, is a throwback to the vintage Castle Grayskull prototype. There was a little skull at the top of the elevator, so that's what we've got here. Very cool looking, painted with this very shiny gold plastic, but what's really neat about it, a fun little hidden feature, they're on the same ball joints as the regular Masters of the Universe Classics figures' heads. So you can pop these skulls off, which means you can pop those on the bodies of any of your Masters of the Universe Classics figures and make some crazy gold-headed skeleton guys. Which also means you can take the heads off of some of the Masters of the Universe Classics figures and put them on the pikes at the tops of the elevator, which could actually be frightening or hilarious, however you want to do it. Alright, and that is going to bring us down back to the base. You'll notice that there's a little hole right here in the floor. That hole is there for your Wind Raider or your Sky Sled or your Jet Sled. If you purchase the Wind Raider, you got a flight stand with it. This flight stand is able to plug into that hole right there in the base, and it clips in nice and tight. Now, let me go ahead and show you guys what this looks like with the Wind Raider on it. One thing I will say here is that the Wind Raider is just a little too big to be plugged in to Castle Grayskull. First of all, we're on the inside of the castle, and you can always ask the question, why is the Wind Raider parked inside of the castle? That's a little strange, and it takes up a lot of space. So it's an interesting idea. It just doesn't seem to work too well with the Wind Raider here. But that flight stand does also work with the Sky Sled, or the Jet Sled, or whatever they're calling it these days. So you can just pop that on there. And you could store that on the inside of Castle Grayskull. Now, that takes up a lot less room and seems to work a lot better. So if you want to utilize that little flight stand there, you do have the option to do so. Might be an interesting new way to display your Jet Sled or maybe your Wind Raider if you're okay with that. Now, while most of the inside of the castle is basically just the reverse of the sculpting on the outside like the vintage one, there are some really nice little added details to the walls in here that make it stand out as something a little unique. I like some of the little details, like you can see this little window on the inside, how it does kind of have a deco going around it with a little gargoyle dragon sculpted to the top of it. That's something really neat that I didn't even notice before. And then even better than that, over here, a little more science-y, a little more high-tech, we've got a cool little computer system over here with a nice view screen that kind of shows a solar system up there at the top. It's a really nice deco. It's done in that same shiny silver paint, and it's got some bright metallic greens and blues and golds kind of painted all over it. Very cool looking little panel. It's a great little meeting place for, like, I don't know, Man-at-Arms and He-Man to kind of discuss what's going on out there. It is worth noting that these are all glued in place. You can see that they are very solid. They are non-removable, so you can't pull those out. It's meant to stay right there in the castle, but it's very nice looking. And then if we come back down here to the bottom floor, you can just see the inside part of that secret door that I showed you with Scare Glow earlier. The one that we opened up with the key. Now, of course, you don't need the key. You can just push it open right there, but that way you can see what it looks like from the inside of the castle. Here we are on the other side of the castle. We're going to start up here at the top and kind of work our way down on this side. So like we mentioned over there, that we do have an added third level. So there's an extra ledge going all the way up across the top, which basically doubles as the top portion of the castle, where the towers are at. So this is where your blaster gun is plugged in. This is where we got the flag sitting. But one of the other little features is this little hidden door that's up here basically in the crown of Castle Grayskull. It's a little wooden looking door, and when you pop that open, that is where we've got the little orb holder. Now, if you have the orb from your King Grayskull figure, this is where you can put it. The castle does come with an orb holder, but no orb. But it's got a nice little new orb holder that fits in this little spot right there. So then if you've got your little blue orb that came with your King Grayskull figure, you can pop that right on there. And you can put it in there. So it's like the power of Grayskull right there, hidden away in the top of the castle. You can lock it away. So that's a fun little extra little bonus and gives us somewhere to finally put that orb. But again, another accessory that came with a figure a long time ago that we now finally have somewhere to put. I really like that. It's a cool forward thinking by Mattel, I think. All right, working our way down to the next level here. We got a lot of fun stuff going on in here. First of all, let's talk about the Spacesuit Armor. In the vintage Castle Grayskull, this was nothing more than a cardboard cutout, much like the view screen was on the other side. So this time around, it's a fully sculpted little accessory. And let me pull this out to show you. It is hollowed out on the back, so it's not a full action figure, but it's mostly solid and it's very nice looking. Got a great paint deco on there, does a great job of bringing that classic piece of cardboard into a 3D form. It does just have normal peg holes in the bottom of the feet, and there's just two little peg holes on the floor of the castle, so that's how he plugs on there. Which means if you want to replace him with somebody like Castle Grayskull Man, maybe you want to put Castle Grayskull Man in there as like the golem protecting Castle Grayskull, you can do that. Now, it is worth noting that the little pegs on the floor are a little tight. It actually took a little work the first time to get it plugged onto the suit of armor here and with Castle Grayskull Man, but it does work, and it actually gives you some different options for display, which is pretty neat. Right next to him on the floor, you'll see a little computer panel thing. Again, just like the computer on the other side, it's glued in place, so it's not removable. But it is a neat little sculpt, and it's done in the same cool, shiny, metallic paints as the computers on the other side were. Then hanging up here on the wall right next to him is this neat little diamond plaque. This is a great addition to the castle. This is meant so that you can place the Sword of Power and the Sword of Protection crisscross with each other. One part of it is a little wider so that it fits the Sword of Power, while the other side is a little thinner, meant to hold the Sword of Protection. And it gives you a really great display piece. Now, it doesn't actually come with those swords, unless you count the little silver Sword of Power that came as part of like the weapons rack display. You don't get a Sword of Protection, though. So basically, you just want to use what you've already got with He-Man and She-Ra. And that way, you can make a neat little cool display in there if you want to display the swords that way, instead of on the figures. And then we're going to work our way over to the throne. Now, if you guys had the classic castle, you of course remember the throne and the neat little trap door. That accessory is still in place in this particular castle. Just like on the vintage one, there's a little square trap door molded right into the base there, and it's got the same cool little rug sticker on there with the eyeball on it, so it looks like the rug, just like in the classic castle. And then we do have a little throne chair here. Now, first of all, the chair, it can hold pretty much most of your basic figures. Now, a lot of people are going to look at that and they're going to think, Sorceress, right? Filmation definitely had Sorceress hanging out in Castle Grayskull, so this is where you'd want her to sit. Now, we do have the problem with Sorceress having those large wings. One of the things Mattel did to fix that problem is there is a slit in the bottom of the chair so that her tail feather can fit down into that chair nicely. But the armrests of the chair do make her wings kind of sit funny, so you still can't put her wings all the way down. It's a little unfortunate, and I do wish that they had some slits in the arms of the chairs or something so that her wings can go all the way down. But if you don't mind it kind of sitting upwards or sitting funny, you can still get the Sorceress to at least sit in the chair. So at least we do have the slit there. But it would have been much better if we can actually get her to sit all the way down with her wings looking normal. But maybe if you want to go a little more old school mini comic, you can also use this throne for your Skeletor figure. But if you want to go forward into the future, one thing you can't do is use this for King He-Man, because with that big bulky cape, it's just not happening, unfortunately. But Mosquitor sits in there nicely, so that's pretty cool, and that's a major plus, right? Now, of course, once you get a figure sitting in that chair, that is actually what's going to activate the trapdoor. So basically, if you get any of your figures to stand on the trapdoor there, you just will rotate the chair. And when you rotate the chair, it's just the top of the chair that turns. It triggers a mechanism that sends the figure falling down to the bottom of the castle. Now, I'm going to be a little nitpicky about this, a little funny. First of all, I love the feature. The feature's great. It's a lot of fun. Totally harkens back to the vintage castle and even works much better than the vintage castle. But, you remember that little blurb on the front of the box that says a trapdoor drops them down into the dungeon? Well, I gotta be nitpicky and point out that it doesn't drop them down into the dungeon. And instead it just drops the figures off at the front door of Castle Grayskull. So I guess it's just like, yeah, get out of here, go home. And it just lets them leave out the front door. Because the dungeon's over here, and the trapdoor's over here. So I don't know, it's a little silly. But that is worth noting that we do have a full dungeon this time around in this particular castle. If you remember on the vintage one, there was just a sticker grate that was on the bottom of the castle that was directly underneath the trapdoor. So it was supposed to be like you dropped him on this little dungeon grate thing. This time around, we have a little walled off area, which is locked in place. You can't remove this. But it does have a little silver door there that does open up. And if you look on the inside, that same sticker of the dungeon grate is on the floor inside of this dungeon, just like on the vintage castle. So that is a neat little touch still. It's very small quarters in there. There's not a lot of space. And as you can see, the door is very tiny. So it's hard to get the figures in. You really have to do that thing where you turn them sideways to stick them in there. And then once they're in there, the door's so short that you can't even see their heads. It's a very small, cramped little cell. But one thing that's neat is it does come with this little handcuff accessory, which is a metal chain. Very nice. It's a real metal chain. So you can clip the handcuffs on your figures there, and then there's another one hanging off the wall inside the dungeon, so you can chain them up while they're inside the dungeon too. So that's a fun little accessory there. But it's a very small, very cramped looking little dungeon. And then that is going to bring us over here on the other side of the trapdoor, or the trapdoor and the drawbridge. You'll notice that there's these kind of little round part sticking off of the castle walls there. That is more decoration areas. It's more places where you can plug in shields and stuff. So if you have more shields and stuff you want to decorate the walls of the castle with, you've got more places to do that. And then the final little fun thing in here, we're going to move right back up right next to the chair, because on the side is another secret door, a little escape area that if you just push it from the inside, it folds open to kind of exit out to this little ledge on the outside of Castle Grayskull. So this trapdoor opens up to the outside of Castle Grayskull. Now, I will point out that, again, it's a very small door. So you definitely have to do the thing where you have to turn your figure sideways to get him out of it. And as you can see, He-Man stands taller than it. So he doesn't stand to where you can actually just push him through it. It doesn't, you know, he would definitely have to duck down. I mean, but to be fair, if there were secret doors in Castle Grayskull, you'd probably be ducking and crawling your way through them, right? So that exits out to the ledge that's on the outside. Now the ledge is a neat little accessory or an added piece to this castle, because it's another one of those things that was shown off in early artwork for the original castle, early prototypes, but was cut from the vintage playset. So it's another thing that was added back on to this new Castle Grayskull. Now it is a smaller ledge. It's kind of hard to actually get a figure to stand up there. You'd have to find the right way to balance them. But it does look nice. I do really like having that ledge finally back on there. So that, my friends, brings us back to the front of Castle Grayskull, where I can show you guys He-Man standing in the drawbridge. Now, one of the early concerns with Castle Grayskull was that it just wasn't tall enough at the door. And one of the things that Mattel and the Horsemen did is they actually dropped in this base right here so that the drawbridge folds down more into it. And that made a huge difference because, as you can see, if you stand He-Man right there on the drawbridge door, there is quite a bit of clearance between his head and the top. So it looks really nice, much better than it originally did. So He-Man looks great standing there. Battle Cat looks great standing in there. Unfortunately, He-Man sitting on top of Battle Cat, his head does hit the top. So you can't really put He-Man on top of Battle Cat and put him through the castle door there. But it does still look nice. And honestly, I'm perfectly fine with what's happened here. I think they did a great job of really making this thing massive and look big, especially when compared to the figures here. Alright, so we've seen everything on the inside. We've seen everything on the outside. One thing that's really fun about this is, just like the vintage one, you can fold it all back up. So those little floorboards we put on the inside, they're very easy just to kind of pop back out there. You can take them all apart. They unsnap a lot easier than the stuff on the top that I showed you that I plugged in a little bit ago. And then we can fold the castle up just like the vintage one. Now, I don't think we can actually fit all these floorboards on the inside because there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and it just doesn't look to me like everything's going to fit. Now, so you can fit all the accessories and everything, and you can definitely probably cram some figures and everything in here as well. Get all the weapons out of the way, and then once you get it closed up, you've got these little latches on the side that clip in place, and boom! Castle Grayskull is ready for the go. Alright guys, it's comparison time! So here's the brand new Castle Grayskull standing alongside the vintage Castle Grayskull. This will give you a great side-by-side comparison to show you the sheer size difference between the two castles. But also this lets you see all the similarities and the differences between the two. You can see the sculpting differences and the likenesses, all the cool little accessories within, everything that matches up and is really updated nicely for this brand new castle. And here's the new Castle Grayskull standing alongside the 2000X version of Castle Grayskull. Now that toy looked a lot different from the vintage one, so you can really see the difference between these two here, especially in the design of the skull on the front. Plus that 2002 one was really thin, so this new one is very massive in comparison. And how about this? Just for fun, why don't we go ahead and show Castle Grayskull alongside some of the other larger toys out there, just to give you even better of an idea of just how big this particular castle is. So there you go, guys. There is a detailed look at Mattel's brand new Castle Grayskull playset for their Masters of the Universe Classics lineup. Like I said at the very beginning of the review, this is one of those things that I just never thought we would actually get. Anytime there was ever speculation of a Castle Grayskull, I shook it off. I thought, no way would we ever get a playset like this in this new line because of how big and crazy it would have to be. So I'm standing here to this day still just completely stoked that this thing exists. And I must say that I am very happy with the end results. I know it was a long and bumpy road on our way to get here. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of missteps along the way, a lot of things that had to be addressed and fixed, and at the very end of this whole process, I think that Mattel and the Four Horsemen did a pretty amazing job with this thing. The overall girth and size of it is amazing. I know there were a lot of questions in the beginning about how big this thing would be, but it's going to be one of those things that you just aren't going to understand how massive this playset is until you have it in person. It's going to be one of those things where you're not going to know where to put this thing when you get it. It really is that big. And while it probably could be bigger compared to the Masters Classics figures, yes, it's just one of those things that's just like, how big can we really get a playset to be? And I think the size of this thing is perfect as far as this goes. All of the action features that are included are really fun, and they work really well for the most part. I have minor gripes with things like the Sorceress being unable to sit in the chair, and the fact that the trapdoor just drops down next to the dungeon instead of inside the dungeon, but for the most part, I think everything else is really fun on this. I like all the little secret doors, the fun little extra accessories that were included, all the little opening mechanisms, all of that stuff on there is a lot of fun. And what's really great about this is it's going to work great for display with the thing closed up, if you want the outside of the castle displayed, if you want to open it up. There's so much room to play with your figures or display with all of your figures, you know. Put it up on a shelf, cram all your classics figures on there, make this giant battle scene. It looks incredible, and it is so much fun. And I think everybody is really going to love this thing when they finally get their hands on it. At the very end of the day, I do think it's all worth it. This is a fun playset. So pre-orders for these went up a long time ago, and they're finally going to be shipping here within the next few weeks. So if you were able to pre-order this castle, you should be expecting it soon. There's going to be a very limited stock of these going back on sale in December on MATTYcollector.com. So if you missed out on the pre-order and this is something that you want, definitely stay tuned to that site because you're going to want to snag one up before they're gone for good. So there you go, guys. A look at Castle Grayskull. Until next time.